Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the April 11th Town of Penfield Planning Board meeting. We have one public hearing this evening. We will hear the application. We'll have questions from the board and open it for questions from the audience. Following the public hearings, we'll deliberate in the back of the auditorium all matters before us. Should you have any questions after this hearing, please feel free to call the Planning Department office. Katie?
Application number 1, Randy Bebout, T.Y. Lynn International, 255 East Avenue, Rochester, New York, 14604, on behalf of Hess Corporation, requests under Articles 9-9-2 and 10-10-2 of the Code preliminary and final site plan approval and an expansion to an existing conditional use permit to allow the construction of a drive-through lane and window and other associated site improvements at the existing Hess facility on 1.78 acres located at 2180 Penfield Road, to be known as 2180 Penfield Road. The property is now or formerly owned by Hess Realty Corporation and is zoned general business and 250 overlay. Application number 13P-0013, SBL number 140.01-1-4.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jerry Goldman. I'm the attorney and agent for Hess Corporation. With me this evening on this application are Pat McAndrew, who's the director of real estate, right to my right, and Randy Bebout, who is the engineer for the project from T.Y. Lynn International. We're pleased to come here tonight for an application for conditional use permit and site plan approval for the Hess location on the northeast corner of Penfield Road and Route 250. The site is 1.787 acres, a pretty generous acreage for the activities which are here. Currently on the site are a Hess Express building and gas pumps, both of which will remain the same. The only changes to the site functionally are the addition of a drive-through component which wraps around the building as depicted on the site with bypass lanes, etc., and a change in the two co-brand users within the site, within the building itself. We've met in concept with the planning board. We've also met with staff and reviewed the application. We have made a number of modifications as a result of those meetings to try to address any concerns with regard to the application. Randy will go through the changes, but primarily what we're trying to do is in some ways actually ameliorate a situation which is going on at the intersection with the plaza to the north, and to in fact use some directional tools to be able to help circulation within the site itself. So as not to take away from Randy's thunder, I'll turn it over to Randy now, and if there are questions, we'll all be available to answer them. Thank you.
Good evening. And for the record, I'm Randy Bebout with T.Y. Lynn. Just to pick up where Jerry left off. So here in the shaded areas, the new pavement proposed for the site for the operation of the drive-through. The main lane basically running adjacent to the building. Pickup window here on the northwest side, and then exiting out here over into the existing access lane. And then we have provided a bypass lane, so if a car decides to get into the drive-through, he has a means to get out of the drive-through lane. From the order window back to the order point, there's 4 cars, and then there's an additional 7 cars sitting behind the car that's ordering, going out to the front here. We have delineated the drive-through directional arrows and guiding people into the drive-through lane from both 441 and from Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. And part of that, and as we've discussed and worked through this, is guiding cars around the south side of the existing canopy. We've provided some, we'll be providing a sign here directing people into the drive-through with directional arrows and a solid stripe directing cars to come around the south side of the canopy and then cut across with a stop bar here at this intersection, and then to directing them across to the drive-through lane. We have provided landscaping along the north edge up here. There's a 5-foot buffer area there between the pavement and the property line. And those are an evergreen species that'll provide buffer year-round. And then with that, from our submission back in, we made a submission on March 1st, which addressed the prior PRC comments and the board comments. I won't go through them in great detail other than to kind of highlight the things that are more important. There was a question about the plant species, which we have changed to be more salt tolerant. We have added, just to the plan, really for clarity, we had added a bunch of existing features that weren't there originally as far as the locations of the islands under the canopy. Added some of the stripes that were there at one point that need to be restriped, which really helped define the circulation patterns. And then just some of the other features to help the plan, to make the plan a little easier to follow. One of the items that we talked about probably a fair amount at the last meeting was the car wash operation fundraising events that occur along this south curb edge, probably more particularly the car wash and the function of that, and how are we going to handle that. So the way we've addressed that, and it was spelled out in the letter, was we've delineated 4 parking spaces along this edge. We determined from not only really visual observations of aerials, but from our prior parking study that we had submitted, that cars are parking there. So we've delineated this area, which is in relation to the car wash events will allow us to, the fundraising crew, to park cars in those areas, be running the car wash operation, and further store operations providing kind of a coning off that area so that the kids, young students, parents, while that operation is going on, are a little further protected, so that operation can still continue without impacting the store operations. We think that's a reasonable solution to that concern. And the rest of the March 1st response letter addressed the Article 9, Section 9.3 factors to consideration, which really just addresses some of the pedestrian traffic circulation, stormwater stuff, items. I won't go through those bit by bit. Certainly if the board has any questions on those, I'd be glad to answer those. And then we also addressed the Section 10.4, the standards governing conditional uses, which again kind of address a lot of the same type of items as far as ingress and the food vendors. We did receive the PRC comments and had just recently, as early as this week, had responded to those. Most of those comments from the town engineer, Jeff Benway, and I'll just walk through the highlights of those. There was a request to increase this inside drive-through lane to 12 feet. We did not do that, and for the reasons being, we do have a 20-foot clear area here, curb to curb, which provides adequate turning movement around this radius. And the plan does show cars sitting here, but that was really just to depict that there is a bypass lane there. There's plenty of room for cars to get by. The likelihood that a car will be there as this car is turning will be fairly infrequent, because we don't anticipate a significant amount of people jumping out of the drive-through lane. So we wanted to hold that 20 feet because if we did have to increase that inside lane to 12, the result was going to be either we would need to narrow up this buffer or we would need to reduce this inside radius, which was a concern originally of town staff. So that was I think that was the only comment that we really didn't address. The rest of some of the other comments were adding a stop bar here. We had originally had a yield sign here. Mr. Benway suggested that we turn that into a stop sign and a stop bar, which we've done. There was a question about the canopy at the pickup window and whether we had adequate clearance, and we do. That is remaining. We do have adequate clearance for that. We've added a sign at the drive-through entrance. Do not block road sign. Just in other words, we want to encourage people not to, if this happened to be out to here, encourage people not to sit here and block this lane. far as the grading plan, there was some questions about adding some additional information about storm flows and about the underdrain. Some of that information was on the plans, and we've further clarified some of the other information. There was a question not only from Jeff, but also from the county about the stormwater flows to the DOT system. The stormwater basin sits here. There's a basin and the outlet pipe discharge out to this system. We will be submitting a stormwater memo, which we had submitted to the town. We're going to expand on that a little bit and submit that to DOT for their review. In a nutshell, the stormwater increases are pretty minimal, really insignificant, because this stormwater pond is an infiltration system. So we don't anticipate any issues with that. Utility plan comments were really technical stuff. Probably the biggest thing there was he had recommended that we install a mountable curb on the inside radius here coming out of the drive-through lane after you leave the window, so we have revised that. I think the concern was there maybe a truck or a bigger vehicle might end up jumping the curb, and that would just give them a means to, so they don't run into the side of a vertical curb. And then there was a question on the landscape plan, a recommendation to provide additional plantings along the outside patio area of the subway, which we have done, and used the same species that's here along this buffer area. So with that, that kind of goes through all the comments that we've addressed. I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
Wrap up with one thought before we get to questions. Would like to point out that this is a no variance plan. It is a plan which is fully conforming with all of the town code requirements. Like I said, we have a 3,500 square foot building. We have the gas pumps as depicted over here on a 1.787 acre site, which is pretty generous in the whole scheme of things. The effort really has been concentrated in the staff comments and everything else on dealing with traffic calming in that particular area near the intersection. As you can tell, there is cross access with our neighboring plaza. There is an island, so there isn't a real serious driving, speed driving going through here. So the whole objective is really to try to manage all the issues which the board may have. With that, we'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Well, you answered question number one about the variances, so thank you for that. About the car stacking, do you have other sites that have this type of scenario or layout? Not necessarily the way it's all laid out from a physical standpoint, but with the co-branding and Burger King drive-through at the site, and what has been your experience with the maximum, at the busiest time, how many cars do you get stacked up?
And I don't know if you have any insight on that. The response I have to that is as part of our original traffic volumes, we did look at the one in Tarpon Springs, Florida, that has a similar operation. That's one of the few that is in operation. Our company's experience with drive-through is, based on the use here, that this should be more than adequate as far as stacking. I mean, 11 cars, we always like to think that if it's more than that, then probably operationally something, might not be working right. So we're pretty
Faster
comfortable.
workers.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty comfortable with this amount of stacking. Certainly, we want business to be good, but I think, this is a more than adequate stacking compared to probably most drive-through sites that you look at, where you may have a building that's closer to the street and, you would be backing up towards the entrance drives.
Thinking about the McDonald's across the street, and it gets stacked up pretty heavily at cars there. But if you could comment, if you have any experience, that would be terrific.
The normal max is about 7 or 8. That's always what we target, is at least 7 or 8. And We don't have that many drive-throughs, to be honest with you. This is our second Burger King drive-through, but we have plenty of Dunkin' Donut drive-throughs, one in Brockport you may be familiar with. I would say as long as we have enough coverage for 7, that is 95% of the time going to be adequate.
One other thing to point out with regard to it is that this is not a full-service Burger King operation. It is a Burger King Express, so there are limited menu offerings. So in essence, the objective is speed, to get people in, to get people out, to keep people moving throughout. And that's exactly what it is. And with the bypass lane available, certainly if people start getting into this area, they can escape and can get out. And most people don't want to wait that long.
This is one of those Burger Kings where you cannot have it your way, for all you old folks.
With qualification. With qualification. You're absolutely right. You have to have it our way.
Have it our way.
That's it.
Okay. How often do you foresee that escape lane being utilized? Is it really just for, our
There's some
PRCs,
value. There's some value with sometimes the screaming kids or somebody deciding that they just don't want to wait or don't have time to wait. I mean, it's relatively early on in the scheme of things. So, if people see that they're going to have a problem, they could go around. There is some real value in doing it, and like you said, like Randy pointed out, we aren't really adding that much impervious surface to the site, and we have addressed the drainage aspects of it.
Okay. Busiest projected times. Which meals?
Really lunch. It's about 15% is breakfast of the total Burger King business. I don't know the breakdown, lunch versus dinner, but lunch is clearly between 11 and 2 is the busiest day part for Burger King. I don't know the exact percentage, but.
And would it be busier during the week, do you anticipate, versus weekends, or
Yes.
just the
Yeah.
same?
Friday is normally the busiest day. Usually it increases as the week goes on. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then it drops back down Saturday. And Sunday is always the slowest day.
Okay, and then the same drive-through would be for Dunkin' and for Burger King?
It's a Burger King
It's
drive-through.
Burger King drive-through, so you can't get donuts
Yeah, I
unless
mean, if
they're Burger
somebody-
King donuts.
They serve coffee. If somebody wants a
Yeah.
cup of coffee, the coffee served would be Dunkin'. But beyond that,
Okay.
they're not serving their own coffee. So it's not an incremental coffee being
So
served.
if you want donuts, you gotta go into the store,
Yes.
or go to the real Dunkin'
Right.
Donuts.
That's correct. You need your exercise if you're getting a donut. You have to
Right.
go. You have to physically go inside.
Work it off on the
That's it.
15 steps back to the vehicle.
Pretty much that's it. Just that you know, from a competitive point of view, the franchisee, the owner of the Dunkin', further up the road than the one also in Penfield, is participating in the store. It's not a competitive situation. This is really a complementary situation. And when you take a look at it, it does provide a traffic benefit to the extent if someone wants Dunkin' and they're traveling north, they don't have to make lefts in, lefts out to go to, what do we call it, Webster, I think that place up north. So they don't have to do that if this facility is here.
Okay. The other thing, there's scuttlebutt, somebody read an article in the Wall Street Journal that Hess is divesting from retail gasoline operations or something
Hess
like
Corporate
that.
did make
what's the
that
deal with that?
statement. We were requested to provide a letter from Hess Corporate indicating that they were going forward with this proposal and what they intend to do. We are told that regardless, this is going forward, and in the way of the business world, we don't anticipate that anything is going to happen in a quick time frame.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I have at the moment. Thanks.
Yeah, just got one question about the, you said it's gonna be a different type of Burger King. Is that gonna be cooking hamburgers, french fries, you're not gonna grease?
I'm told it's a limited menu, and what I think that means is that it's designed for speed. I don't know exactly what the change in the menu items are, though.
My concern is obviously the ventilation.
Yeah.
Obviously, if there's gonna be grease fries.
We are serving burgers and fries, but it has a hood with a fire suppression system. So it's a very, very high-tech, very, very expensive hood, but we will be preparing burgers there.
That's gonna be a whole new ventilation system that's not presently on the property, correct?
That is correct. We have a hood there today for our Godfather Pizza. That's coming out, and then we're replacing the hood, though, with a bigger and better one for Burger King.
About like grease storage for,
Yeah, there is an existing grease trap for the facility. It's located in this back corner over here. And we did the original design of that, so we were familiar with that.
They could convert it to diesel fuel, right?
correct.
All the grease? Right on site.
Question about landscaping. We do have a letter here from Bruce Zaretsky, our landscape consultant, and he identified the 26 existing trees on site to be removed, and I don't know if that's accurate or not. It didn't look like that when I looked at the plan, but he also recommended some additional deciduous trees, and I don't see any new additional deciduous trees on your plan. And it seems like there's a few locations where it might be advantageous to have some shade trees in there.
Yeah, I mean, we could, I don't know if the preference is, we do have some Colorado spruces on this side, and then we had more over here. We could replace those with deciduous trees if that was a preference of the board. Because you're right, there is some deciduous trees on the banks of this existing pond today. So those could be, the species of those could be changed out, and we'd be open to suggest.
I don't know about changing out, but adding to.
Or adding to, okay.
And how about on the other side there near the drive-through?
In this area here?
Right.
Yeah, we are putting some bushes around the because we're relocating the transformer. I think I believe, if I recall correctly, there's some, I think there's a couple evergreen trees in there today that are getting impacted. So we could look at adding some landscaping in there.
Yeah, I think just some shade trees would be
Okay,
helpful.
okay. The number seems high. I don't think it's, I didn't recall that it was 26. I can look at that.
You might be counting shrubs
That's probably
and trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say there's a half a dozen trees on the bank of that pond that we are impacting.
I just have another, are you
set.
still asking? Regarding the car wash, I guess I'm gonna call them operations, that you allow for all the nonprofit, teams and all that to do. Do you foresee this having a big impact on that? I mean, I see the drive-through lane really is delineated to go through that area where they have the car washes. Honestly, I don't see people using that lane. I mean, let's be real. Most people are going to cut across. I mean, me for one, probably.
You're coming in off of Penfield Road. so
I'd come in off Penfield Road. True. I don't really foresee that being a problem, but I just wanted to, if somebody's watching on TV that, hey, my baseball team's having a car wash there, am I going to be impacted from that?
And that's why
They probably won't, because I drive by that 3-4 times a day. Every weekend there's some activity. Last weekend there's robotics team, I think, out.
And that was the
40-degree weather,
discussion
kinda.
we had with the operations and again, being able to delineate these spaces where the car wash could occur. Yes, we are guiding people here, and the thought was if we could cone off some of that area to provide an additional buffer to to separate the traffic and the people standing there doing the operations. So, I mean, we think that was a good solution to, accommodate the customers of the store, but accommodate the fundraising and providing a good level of safety.
Yeah, and that's just for the right. It's a nice thing that you guys do. So I don't want to.
Thank you. The other thing that Pat pointed out is that mornings are not really a peak. To my mind, very often the car washes occur on Saturday mornings. So I don't think it's really going to conflict with
Well, that was also one of the
Normal
reasons
peak
why I wanted
traffic.
to know when the busiest
Right.
lunch times were, whether it was during the week or on the weekends, because those factors all come into play as to, boy, is that gonna be crazy? On a Saturday during a car wash, or is it gonna be manageable? So,
That's our thought. We think we can comfortably accommodate everything.
thanks, I'm good.
Ask a quick question here because I don't see it. Is the parking that you were trying to encourage on the outside ring, is that going to be delineated parking places?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are striping that. So we're showing 4 spaces there.
Well,
Thank you.
any other questions? Anyone in the audience? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Close this public hearing.